Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of trade rumors to discuss in regards to the Philadelphia Phillies. Should they go after an outfielder? Who should they go after to try to make the team better? All coming up in just a few moments. Guys, welcome on into another podcast episode of Phillies Baseball with your boy JJ. Do me a solid and hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, turn on those notification bell icons, and that way you'll know when we go live for a Phillies game or if we have to discuss about breaking news in regards to what's going on within this organization. This team has been playing really phenomenal baseball, and at the time of this recording, at 10:58 p.m. Eastern Time on June 4th, man, we're coming off of a high, off of an incredible win. Great walk-off double by Nick Castellanos. They beat the Milwaukee Brewers, and they also won that series and beat a team over 500. Great stuff, but we have a lot to get into on what the Phillies should do in order to make themselves a contender and make themselves an even better ball club. And we'll talk about that in just a few moments. Shout out to Phillies Tailgate and Jeff Passan for being able to discuss what's been going on within the Phillies organization. Jeff Passan tweeted out earlier today that, quote, Dave Dombrowski tends to adhere to go big or go home philosophy. And whether it's Luis Robert, Randy Arozarena, or even Kyle Tucker, he's got the minor league system to convince an on-the-fence team to deal a true impact outfielder. That was according to Phillies Tailgate, and they're absolutely right. Okay, one of these outfielders could potentially make this Phillies team better. But I want to know, down below, before we go any further, who do you think, out of all three of these people, which outfielder do you want on this Phillies team out of all three of these people? That's what I want to know down below. All right, I've said numerous times that I would only go after a few players. I love the way that this team has been playing as a unit and as a whole. They have a very good core. They have great chemistry. This team has that next man up mentality. Trey Turner goes down. Edmundo Sosa steps up. Cody Clemens steps up. Cody Clemens and Brandon Marsh go down. David Dahl has been stepping up to the occasion. Taijuan Walker was out for a little bit of time. Spencer Turnbull steps in and is able to do a good job at filling in for his spot in the rotation, right? This team has that really good core. They have a really good gel. I really don't want to mix and mess with this chemistry that they have going on right now. It is just so much fun to watch. This team is literally destroying teams in the month of May and even in the month of June. They just beat another really good, solid Milwaukee Brewers team, and they just continue to roll. And I don't want to mess up anything with what we have going on. With that being said, there are only a few guys that I would go after. And on that list, my number one target is Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker has been a baller this year. He's been in the MVP conversations. I'll go over some stats in just a few moments. Would I take Luis Robert? I would. But the only way that I'm going to take Luis Robert is if they're also able to get Garrett Crochet in the deal as well. Because I would take a fifth starter. I know I've been all over Taijuan Walker, and I've been a guy that has become to be known as a Taijuan Walker defender. But in an instance where they could get Luis Robert Jr. and Garrett Crochet, I'm doing that deal, and I'm even trying to send Taijuan Walker over to the White Sox. That's the only way I'm going to get Luis Robert on this team, is if you get a 2-for-1 deal. You get Garrett Crochet, and you get Luis Robert Jr. as well. That's how I feel about it. But let's dive into more statistics and talk a little bit more about this. All right, so here we go with Kyle Tucker. So I know that if you look at the batting average, I get it. He's hitting .266 on the season, has 19 homers and 40 RBI. I understand that. But when you take a look at what he brings in totality, okay, he is still a young guy. He's 27 years old, right? He's 6'4", he's 212 pounds. He's a really solid defensive outfielder that the Phillies could absolutely have flexibility on. And I would be totally okay if they decided, you know what, let's take the risk and let's decide to go with Kyle Tucker. Even if we have to get rid of a guy like Johan Rojas, I'm putting him on this team because he's not a locker room cancer. He's a guy that can really step in, and I do have a concern moving forward about how the bats can do stepping up because I have flashbacks to last year's postseason. I do. I get flashbacks to last year of what happened in games 3 to 7 in that NLCS, and Kyle Tucker is another bat that could really provide some sort of damage offensively. He's 5th in OPS, okay? He's literally tied for 2nd in all the home runs. The Phillies could use another type of a good long ball hitter, and he's one of the only guys that I would go after because he's young and he's not somebody that I feel like is going to mesh with the team. And the Astros, if they're willing to give him up, I would be willing to give up a haul for him because I think that he makes the team better. I like how he's a left-handed hitter. I know that the batting average is a little bit lower than what people are expecting, but when he gets on, he's another guy that can really carry the team, and you give him runners in scoring position, it's just absolutely unbelievable what he could do and what he can provide at the plate. So I'm all in on Kyle Tucker. I would be willing to definitely give him the bag, and if the Astros want a lot of prospects for him, I'm giving up the farm for him. I'd be okay with it. I would not mind it whatsoever. Now, I know what you're going to say about Luis Robert, okay? Yeah, he has a 214 average this year, 2 homers and 4 RBI. But, look, this guy, the one thing that cautions me about this trade, if the Phillies did decide to do this, is that he's had a lot of injuries that he's dealt with throughout his career, okay? And he missed 2 months with a grade 2 right hip flexor strain. And he just came back today. Now, as we're speaking, he actually did a home run in tonight's game so far for the White Sox. He has a lot of power in the bat, right? And he's another guy that when he gets going, when he's on a tear, yeah, he can be really, really reliable. But the one question that I have, even though he's another guy that's 26 years old, and he's still young, and he's on a nice, affordable contract. He signed a 6-year, $50 million contract with the White Sox back in 2020, so he actually has a club option in 2025 and in 2026 as well. So maybe from that sort of perspective, that might be worth it just to take on his contract, because he's not like somebody that's really expensive. But the only way I'm going to do this, because I'm really afraid, I'm actually really scared about his injuries, and he's a guy that I have to kind of caution myself about because he does get injured a lot. And he has shown at times that he can struggle at the plate and go through some really bad slumps. He does bounce out of it, yes, and he has a really good arm in the outfield. But injuries are my number one concern about him, and that's another reason why I really don't want to go after him. But the only way I'm going to do this is if they end up going after a guy like Garrett Crochet. Well, who is Garrett Crochet, JJ? Well, he's a pitcher for the Chicago White Sox who's had an incredible season so far. And I know that I've been labeled as a Taijuan Walker defender. I have stood up for this guy. It is clear that he has struggled. And if the Phillies want to go after another guy and just get another arm, go after Garrett Crochet in the starting rotation because so far this year he's 5-5. He has 93 strikeouts and 69 innings of work. He has a 3.49 ERA. He has really good stuff. He's 24. He's making $800,000 this year. Phillies are going to have to try to extend him if they want to keep him. But if we're in a win-now mentality and the White Sox are looking to try to trade Luis Robert, I would do it if they get Garrett Crochet in the deal as well. This guy has been really good this year. He's up for Cy Young. I know it's still early on in the season, but I want that type of a guy in my rotation if I do get an outfielder like Luis Robert because it needs to be a 2-for-1 type of a deal. That's how I look at it, and that's how I feel about going after Luis Robert Jr. And finally, we have Randy Arozarena. His average this year has really not been good at all whatsoever, hitting just 166. He has 8 homers and 19 RBI. And look, say what you want about what happened in 2020 with the whole domestic violence case that he had to deal with, the off-the-field stuff with trying to get his daughter and all that stuff. But from just a baseball perspective, I don't think it makes sense to go after Randy Arozarena because he is not a guy who has a very good batting average, and people say, well, he's a really good power hitter. Statistically speaking, okay, from 2021 to 2023, I'm going to give you stats right here on just home runs. He had 20 homers, okay, and 529 at-bats in 2021, right? He also had 586 at-bats and hit 20 homers in 2022. He did have 89 RBIs that year, but his average was at 263, which is okay. And he also did have 156 strikeouts in 2022. And then last year he had 23 homers, 83 RBI, and although he stole 22 bases, which is pretty nice, he also struck out 156 times. So he's a guy that is sort of kind of like Kyle Schwarber, except he doesn't really walk as much, if that makes sense. Now he's fast, and he can do things out there in the outfield, but I just feel like if we go after an outfielder, unless it's a Kyle Tucker type of a guy, who I think is better defensively, and who I also think does tend to have a better bat than Randy Arozarena does, I wouldn't want to have Randy Arozarena come to Philadelphia, but that's just me. That's how I feel. But what do you guys say? What do you guys think the Phillies should do at the deadline? My thoughts are that they still should go after Mason. I really do. I think that he is the number one prize that they should go after. I'm trying to booster up the bullpen. Okay, if I go after an outfielder and I do get Luis Robert, I need Garrett Crochet to come over here too because it's a big risk with Luis Robert, and I'm willing to take that risk if we can get a guy like Garrett Crochet to booster up the starting rotation. That's how I feel about that. And I'm not really in for Randy Arozarena. But how do you guys feel down below? Comment, give me your thoughts, and I'll catch you all on the next one.